When you prayed that God would heal somebody you loved. When you prayed that God would give you the job and you got passed up. You see, some of us don't have this Rudy-poo relationship with God where we can lift our hands because you did everything I wanted. Some of us have learned to worship even God when you don't do what I ask you to do. Even when it doesn't turn out the way that I want it to. God, I still worship you because you're not my genie, you're my savior. And if you don't give it to me the way I ask, it's because I trust you've got a greater and bigger plan for me. This is a mature walk with God. It's when you keep serving even when you've got church hurt and you don't just leave and start up another church. You don't just leave and start going to another church. I stayed here. I stayed anchored right where I was, even in spite of the fact that I was disappointed and I was hurt, because God, you don't have to do it my way for me to still show up. I know that's not popular. Because everyone wants to believe that if God does what I ask him to do, then my worship is going to increase. But I'm here to tell you the true friends of God are the ones who don't mind when God disappoints them. I was studying, and you have to give me liberty, Ella. You had to give me liberty because this may sound a little bit odd, but have you ever been in a position where you have to forgive God for disappointing you? I know it doesn't really sound popular. No one ever talks about having to kind of come to terms and reconcile that God, you didn't do what I thought you were going to do. Yeah, you didn't fix the marriage. You didn't save me from the jail time. You didn't show up the way I thought that you would. And if you aren't careful, you will become religious if you don't take a moment to reconcile with God that this didn't happen the way that I wanted it to happen. I'm still coming to church, but me and God haven't had this encounter. We haven't talked about this area of disappointment. God, I need to know. I need to understand why it didn't happen the way that I wanted it to happen. God, I need peace in spite of the fact that I prayed to you. I thought that you were really going to do it. I fasted and I cried and I prayed and I gave and I sowed a seed, and yet it still didn't turn out the way I wanted it to. God, please help me. Help me understand how I ended up in this situation. Help me to trust you even when you don't show up the way that I wanted you to. Yeah, he's an on-time God, but he's on his time and not our time. And we're all clapping now. But when God is not on your time, we don't clap like we just clapped in this room. When God is not on your time, it makes you angry. When God is not on your time, it hurts you. When God is not on your time, it makes you question whether you were doing the right thing in the first place. Can I talk to some real people in this room? Because I want you to understand where Zacharias and Elizabeth are at this point in the text. They have continued serving God in spite of the fact that God didn't answer the prayers that they wanted him to answer when they wanted him to answer it. And they still served God. I think there's a special kind of blessing. I know that even when you don't serve God, that his grace is sufficient, but I think there's a special kind of blessing for people who learn how to serve through disappointment. I think it makes you more like God. If you think about it, he still serves us even when he's disappointed in the things that we do. So to then turn around and say, God, if you don't do it my way, I'm going to turn my back on you, makes us an unqualified lover. But when you are in real relationship with God, you start saying, even when you disappoint me, I trust that what's on the other side of this disappointment is something greater that I didn't even know to pray for. God, I'm serious about this thing with you. God, if it works out or doesn't work out, I'm going to be okay, because this is about me and you. It's not about what I'm praying for. It's not about what I think will be a blessing. This is about me and you, and I cannot do anything without you. So I'm not going to let my disappointment separate me from the love of God. I'm not going to let my pain separate me from the love of God. I'm going to take that pain, I'm going to take that disappointment, and I'm going to serve it to the one who makes all things work together for my good. God, show me. Show me how to see past this issue we have. There's an issue between God and Zacharias and Elizabeth. And when we find him in the text, he's given up on the prayer of having a child. He's buried it, if you will. I wonder how many buried prayers are in this room. I wonder how many buried prayers are walking down Hollywood Boulevard. I wonder how many buried prayers are still showing up on the red carpets and still acting like they've got it all together, but nobody knows there's a buried prayer down on the inside of me, a prayer that I gave up on because I didn't think that God was going to do it. And so Zacharias and Elizabeth, they're still serving God, and they have a pattern and a rhythm. And I got to show you in this text what I learned about Zacharias and Elizabeth that I think God is going to show us about our walk with him. You have to understand that in order for Zacharias to be called to come into the temple to light the altar of incense, this was not just some routine, just run-of-the-mill opportunity. At that time, there were over 18,000 priests serving the temple. So for him to be chosen to keep the fire going at the altar of incense was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I happen to believe that part of the reason why he was selected was because he learned how to serve through disappointment. I think that's a word for somebody. Somebody caught it, that what makes you choosable, what makes you qualified to be pulled up to the next dimension of glory, the next dimension of grace, the next dimension of success is not because everything went the way that you wanted to, but because you didn't quit when it didn't go the way you wanted it to. He gets this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to light the altar of incense. And let me tell you, this is a powerful opportunity because he is going to light the altar of incense. For those of you who study and you're theologians, you know that the altar of incense is the most important, arguably, mediation between the people, the Hebrew people, and God. The altar of incense is where the prayers of the Hebrew people are constantly filling the temple and being ascended up into the ceiling or up into heaven. So when he is chosen to light the altar of incense, what God is saying is that I want to put you in charge of representing someone else's prayers, even though your prayer wasn't answered. Zacharias has to be a mature person in order to do this. And so he's been pulled up and he's coming up and God is blessing him to have this opportunity. And we know that God is blessing him to have this opportunity because he's going to be intimately positioned, intimately acquainted with a place he only once knew from a distance. He's a priest. Everyone knows about the temple. Everyone knows about how you're supposed to handle yourself when you get into the temple. This is not uncommon for him to know the procedures. But the thing is that up until this point, he's only known it from a distance. But because he put himself in a situation where his heart remained pure in spite of disappointment, he was allowed access. He was granted access to a place he would have only known from a distance, but instead is becoming intimately acquainted with the temple. And I believe that there are people in this room who have suffered from disappointment. And they've been on the outside looking in at the next dimension of glory. And they've been wondering if they're ever going to have that opportunity to access that dimension of glory. And I hear God saying, because you stayed faithful, you were going to become intimately acquainted with a place you only once knew from a distance. Don't worry, I'm coming down your lane. There's someone in this room who passed up on toxic relationships and jokers because they wanted to have the real deal marriage. And I hear God saying that because you remained faithful, because you kept your heart pure, because you didn't give in to temptation, because you didn't Put yourself on clearance because you didn't sell yourself short. I know it looks like you had to take the long way home, but what I'm telling you is you are about to be intimately acquainted with the place you only knew from a distance. I feel the presence of God in this room. I'm telling you that you're only one step away, that you're only one casting of the lots away from being intimately acquainted with the person who's going to help you get your business off the ground. You're going to be intimately acquainted with the person who's going to help you get the addiction off of you. You're going to be intimately acquainted with the place you once only knew from a distance. God is going to accelerate for you what it took other people lifetimes to do. That's better than y'all clapping, but that's all right. Because if you really let that get down in your spirit, you would start looking at every day differently, because you would be waiting on the opportunity where God said it's go time. You would be waiting for the opportunity where God says, now I can choose you. I hear God saying, stay choosable. I hear God saying, don't give up yet. I've seen you praying. I've seen you crying. I've seen you showing up. I've seen you serving even when it hurt. I see you serving even when you were broken. I saw you still going in the house even though you hated the environment. I hear God saying, I see you, I know you, and you're about to be intimately acquainted with the thing you've been praying for. You got to turn me up in the microphone, because I'm not leaving this stage until the glory of God falls in this place. You got to turn me up in the microphone, because I'm not leaving this place until somebody realizes that I'm going to be intimately acquainted with the place I only knew from a distance. I wish you would grab up and reach it from heaven. I wish you would come up and say, God, I hear you talking to me about my situation. I'm not going to be on the outside looking in any longer. I'm not going to see everyone else doing it any longer. Intimately acquainted. I'm going to put you right in the room. I'm going to put you right in the room. You saw everyone else doing it. Now you're going to get your shot. I'm going to put you right in the room because I can trust you, because you stayed faithful, because you didn't give up, because no weapon formed against you prospered, because you kept worshiping even when you were weary, because you kept praising God and treating people well and being kind even when they were turning their backs on you. Yeah. That's how y'all want to do? Yeah. Yeah. God, I hear you talking to me. God, I hear you resurrecting prayers. God, I hear you reaching down on the inside and grabbing those buried prayers and breathing on them again. God, I hear you. I'm in the right room because somebody's been serving disappointed for too long. I'm in the right place. I'm in the right text. I got the right story because somebody needs to know that heaven is calling you higher. I hear God saying it's time to come up. I hear God saying I sent a word that was going to reach down and pull you up out of depression and pull you up out of disappointment and to pull you up out of your routine. I came to pull you up out of your routine. God comes to Zacharias and he has him chosen. The lots are cast and he is chosen. He got pulled up to the next level. I got pulled up into the temple. I got pulled up. How did I get here? I got pulled up. I wasn't supposed to be here, but he pulled me up. It was by chance that I got in this room. I got pulled up. I got pulled up. God, you sent a word and it pulled me up, and I had to walk differently and act differently because I heard heaven pulling me up.